Hi everybody, welcome to the Silver Meadow Library. I just want to thank the Friends of the Library for bringing these wonderful programs here. We have some calendars outside of all the other cool upcoming events. But this is Jonathan Kratz, and he's a mushroom enthusiast, prior park ranger. He's also part of the Boston and the Pioneer Valley Mycological Society.
Clubs, yeah, you got it, yep, you're doing great. Yep, good enough.
And, yeah, so he's got a lot of information to share with us, and we're all going to be out there foraging and making feasts. It's going to be wonderful. So let's get the thanks for.
Oh, well, don't clap yet, I could stink. So how do you know? Okay, all right. Well, thank you, and I appreciate you being out here on a beautiful evening when you could be out in a lawn chair, so thank you. So let me tell you what this is and what this is not. So what this is not going to be is Mycology 101. There's going to be a lot of stuff like yeasts and other single-celled fungi and ascomycetes and all kinds of wonderful things that we're not going to get to. But what we are going to get to is enough information, enough background, enough skills so that you can go out and look in the fields, or most likely into woods with trails, and do some investigation of your own. Find some stuff that you might be able to eat, and even if you don't find stuff that you can eat, you'll always find stuff that's beautiful and interesting. And I'm hoping that this will serve both as an introduction to the mushrooms and as an encouragement to go out there and see for yourself. The way I like to start with anything important is in the dark, with mystery. And so I'd like to frame this entire discussion with three, what I call myco-mysteries. The first one. All right, I was leading a walk over at Harvard Forest in Petersham. Anyone familiar with that? I highly recommend it. There's an excellent museum there called the Fisher Museum, which has these marvelous dioramas that tell you about the history of forests in Massachusetts and New England. Very highly recommended. So there's a farm road and there's a berm on the left. I'm on the road, and the person, I couldn't see this other person on the other side of the berm, but it's September. They're on the other side, and the person shouts, "I found a chanterelle on this log." How do they know that he was wrong without even looking at what he had in his hand? That's the first. Shh. If you know the answers, just keep them to yourself for now. Shh. Let's keep it a mystery. Second one is we're looking at two relatively common mushrooms that you can find in New England. And both of them you can eat. One of them you can eat only once. But the other is a popular edible. And the third thing is, those of you who do walk in the woods have seen this before. You know what it is. But it's a kind of intriguing thing that grows in the woods. It's, what is it? Plant, fungus, or something else? I want to say this. Everything that you see here tonight is stuff that you really can't see in our woods. I didn't spring any weird exotics that would be impossible for you to find. The other thing I want you to be aware of, and this is really important, all mushrooms are safe to touch. You cannot get any kind of toxicity or poisoning just from handling the mushroom. In fact, you can even taste mushrooms, and this is something that amateur mycologists and professionals like myself do, is taste, because there are different flavors that can indicate different species, as long as you spit it out. And the reason is that the molecules that are toxic are too large to pass by osmosis through the membranes in our tongue and cheeks, etc. They have to be ingested in order to be toxic. So I just wanted to tell you that. You could touch anything. The most dangerous thing is poison ivy and ground bees. That you need to watch for. But the mushrooms you can handle.
Could you repeat that again?
What's
you
that?
Said about if you eat a mushroom that's toxic, what did you say in your mouth? Something about...
I was saying that it's safe to taste and spit out. You have to swallow to get the poisoning.
Okay.
That's what I said. Now, when we think of mushrooms, I think most of us think about like this. It's something you find in the supermarket. It has a familiar cap, and if you flipped it over, it has a stem growing out of the center, traditional cap and stem. I just want to point out that mushrooms can actually come in many different shapes and sizes. In fact, in this small, very small selection here, only one other has a traditional cap and stem, and that's this flower pot mushroom. And I threw this in here because some of you may have seen this before. Anyone find that little yellow mushroom in there? Yes, I see some nodding heads. That Leucocoprinus burnbaumii, a lovely little dusty yellow mushroom. But they also come in other shapes and sizes. Like for instance, they could grow sideways, like a shelf. As in, you see this young Genodorma sugae, the reishi mushroom. Starts out as a little blob and eventually grows and spreads fan-like. This will turn dark on the top, and we'll get that classic burgundy color. And we'll see that in the slides in the future. Then there's this. Talk about not just one shelf, but multiple shelves up and down the tree. By the way, anyone recognize this mushroom? Somebody does. Well, yeah, you're nodding. You're allowed to say.
Chicken.
That's the chicken, yeah. That's one of the best beginner mushrooms because it's hard to confuse with anything else, and it's very easy to see. Some other things you might notice. Another one that people often ask me about is this gigantic whitish mushroom that you can sometimes find at the base of very old trees. And it's probably the largest fungal body that we typically find in New England, the Barndazarii, Berkeleyi. And if you notice this tombstone, that's telling us where we are. We're in a cemetery, which often is a very good place to look for mushrooms, especially the older cemeteries that have older trees. But continuing on shapes, this is the famous black trumpet. In French, it's called trompe de mort, which suggests deadly poisonous, but it's not. In fact, it's one of the most prized edibles that you can find, and it is relatively common in New England, and I highly recommend it. But then you get into some other strange shapes. Coral mushrooms that, like the name suggests, are shaped like coral. And then if you kind of flip it upside down, it's more like icicles. That's the lion's mane mushroom, and it kind of drips down these long, long points. And then finally, in terms of shapes, we have this rudeness right here. Anyone see these? Yes, the stinkhorns, the kind of phallic-shaped stinkhorns that'll often be found in your mulch piles, in your chopped wood, because wherever it came from, it was inoculated, and they didn't know it, and then it comes across the country, and people spread out, and then, surprise, surprise, what did they find on their lawn? But fundamentally, what the heck is a mushroom? And the truth of it is, this is why it's okay to forage for mushrooms in a way that we wouldn't forage for plants. Because the mushroom is merely the fruit, or the fruiting body, of the fungus. Most of the fungus that we call vegetative, that's actually doing the living, that's doing the eating and making waste and growing, is that white thready stuff you see when you turn over a log in the woods. Have you seen that when you roll it over? Yeah. That's mycelium. That's the fungus. That's the true body of the fungus. And what it's made of is threads that are just one cell wide, and we're talking about 4 to 5 microns, which is millionths of a meter. These little threads form bundles called mycelium, and they spread out into their food source or their substrate. The fruit body that you see here only serves for reproduction. And that's why it's safe why it's okay to harvest mushrooms in the woods, and I never feel guilty about it because it's like taking fruit from a tree. The rest of it is going to live because it's underground or in the wood, etc. So I want to talk a little bit about those fertile surfaces, and it gives me the first excuse to pass things around for people to see. And I'm going to start with this, and we'll start with you, sir. And I just want to show you a little bit before to do the little lesson on this about how these work. Will this work? No. Will this work? No. So what I say is you got to make a sandwich. Your eye is a piece of bread, the object's a piece of bread, and this is the peanut butter and jelly that goes in the middle. It gets really, now with the wide, I'm going to pass this around, the wide one, you can hold a little further, but the more powerful magnification is this little guy. And you want to get in there, and I'll know exactly when you see what I want you to see, because I'll hear it. So I'm going to pass this on this side, and you can start passing that around, just to give you a look. Let me talk about what those fertile surfaces are. So this is the one that we're most familiar with, gills underneath. Very common. But there are other options. One, you could be naked on the side. That is, nothing, just bare, like the skin, the surface. So the outer surface is the fertile surface where the spores will come out. You could also have pores in tubes. So spores are made in the tubes and then come out and shoot down the pores here. So if it's soft and cap and stem, it's a bolete. If it's hard and tough and it has pores and tubes, it's a polypore, which you often find on the sides of trees, and many of them are mild to severe parasites and then later decomposers. So I'm going to pass this around in a second. So what you're going to see when I pass this around, and I'll start in the back this time, is if you look at the undersurface, this is the way it faced down, like that. These will be the pores, and you can actually see the little holes, and they make a nice pattern. But over here, you can actually see the tubes. So let me pass that around as well. Another option is you can have teeth. Anyone recognize, and that's you. When I say anyone, that means you in the green shirt. Recognize this mushroom.
Recognize it, but I don't know the name.
It's the hedgehog. I knew it was on the tip of your tongue. You're about to say it. So that's the famous hedgehog. It's a delicious edible that comes in late summer, early fall, and it has teeth. So the fertile surface is the teeth. Now, what the name of the game is maximizing the surface area. So think about your intestines. If I were to carve you up and open you up and take out your intestines and rip them open, you'd see that the surface inside isn't smooth. It's got all these cilia. What's the point of all that? Maximum surface area for the absorption of nutrients. Now, a similar thing is going on here, but it's going the opposite way. Instead of absorbing, it's pushing out. Maximum surface area for distributing pores is the name of the evolutionary game. But that game can get really weird. Take a look.
What is the color of those on the top, the part we can't see?
I don't know what are you referring to, ma'am?
The one you're talking about.
This one?
That one.
It's like Band-Aid color. You know, white people Band-Aid color? Yeah, like a peachy off-white kind of thing. That's the way I would describe that. Anyone, there's your question. So this is a truffle. Do we have truffles in New England? I'm hearing yes. Which one? No, yeah, no, yeah, what? What?
If they're brought in.
If they're brought in, but I mean native.
No.
Yes, but they're not the good ones. That's the thing. So we do have truffles, but it's not worth getting a pig or a dog for. They're not the delicious ones you get in Italy, Spain, France, etc. We call them deer truffles, etc. They'll make our stomach upset. But here's what I find fascinating now, though. I just told you that the whole point of the fertile surface is to get the spores out there. But truffles aren't on the surface. If you imagine soil as a series of horizons, right? And then forest soil, the very top, you're going to have what? You're going to have the litter, the leaves, the twigs, the needles, etc. Then there's that humus layer before you actually reach, quote, real soil. It's kind of ambiguous. You know that zone where it's not quite soil, it's not longer duff, it's kind of in the middle? That's where these guys live. So they're completely covered. What is it about truffle? What do they do? What's the strategy then? What do we know about truffles? What is notable about truffles?
The smell.
The scent. Yes, the smell. And that smell is saying, eat me, right? And it's attracting deer and rodents, etc. So the animals eat that. You will not be surprised to learn that of all the mushroom spores, and you can think of spores as like mini seeds. They're the equivalent. That's what they're functioning. That of all the spores, guess which ones have the toughest membranes? Well, the truffles. Why? Because they have to survive a magic journey through the intestines, out of the intestines, and then they land in a beautiful substrate, the poop, in which they can grow. It's a wonderful strategy. Now, evolutionary. If a line of mushrooms that were above ground evolves to do this, they'll never shoot out spores again, ever. We've never seen these evolve into cap and stem mushrooms or mushrooms that would spread spores out in the air. However, they can evolve to be stinkhorns. Now, this is the fertile surface is at the top here. Does anyone know which is the old one and which is the young one of these two? The greenish one or the whitish one? Which is the young, which is the old?
So the green's young,
The green is the young?
because it hasn't opened up yet, it looks like.
Okay, you're so close. So it won't, but you got the right idea. This is called gleba. And it's a sticky mass of like olive green gray stuff that stinks like dead flesh. And that dead flesh is honey to a lot of flies and other insects are attracted to decomposed meat, right? Protein. So the strategy is you stink like rotten meat and the flies come and guess what that does? It sticks all their body parts and then the flies spread it around. What's happened here is the flies have taken everything away. This is what's left underneath what you see here. That's what's happened. And if you happen to get, and this could happen in the next few weeks, if you started putting down wood chips, you might start seeing these, especially after rain. Watch them. These won't last long. A day, maybe 2 days at the most. But you'll see this magical transformation from this to this. And you can actually see the flies land and take stuff away. It's really, really cool.
Guess the better guess would have been the green one, because it's not lying flat on the floor.
Well, that too. Now, let's talk about where they grow. So habitat is the where in the general sense. Substrate is what they're actually in or on. So as I said earlier, poop is one choice, and we have some mushrooms growing there. There are mushrooms that prefer lawns and grasses, as we see here. This is an interesting mushroom. Anyone recognize this? An inkcap. And I call these the Mr. Phelps of mushrooms because they self-destruct. The way they release their spores is that they melt. And they start from the bottom and they go up. So these are the older ones, or the ones that are just flat because they've self-digested. And in the black ink are the spores, and they go spreading out around. Another way to live on grass, this is an arch of mushrooms. You ever see a fairy ring or arch of mushrooms? That's a beautiful thing. Go back year after year because they probably will return. Now, why is it going out in a ring? I'm going to have to stand here in the center. Well, if you imagine this, suppose the spore landed, sent out its first little hyphae, it found a comparable mate hyphae that works, and they get together and they start making a new fungus, this mycelium. So where are they going to spread? They're looking for food. So they're going to go out in all directions at once until they hit food. Now, if you have a level, even surface where basically nutritionally it's all about the same, it'll be a ring, right? You're going to grow in a 360 degrees. So what we think is happening is this is going to go, spread around, eat what it can, and then when it's exhausted, its supply for that season, it says, well, time to send up mushrooms. If you come back the following year, you might find that the ring has expanded a little bit. So it's a little bit bigger because it's looking for new food, fresh food sources. Moss is another great place for mushrooms to hide because what's the quality of the bryophytes that moss has? It's characteristic. If I went and squeezed moss, what would happen?
Moisture.
Lots of moisture. Bryophytes are masters of holding moisture. By the way, the reason is that they don't have any vascular tissue. There's no tubes. So all the cells have to have equal access to the water. So they're geniuses at holding on to water, and you often find them flat. If they hold on to water, what's that good for? Mushrooms that like moisture. So you often see it there. A very, very common place to find mushrooms, of course, is on decaying logs, where mushrooms are actually doing the active work of decaying. Mushrooms can also attack other mushrooms. So you see these smaller mushrooms on top parasitizing this older decaying mushroom that you see underneath. And finally, I want to say, just like on a woodland floor with the duff, are there any mushrooms in this picture?
Yes.
There they are, but they're hard to see. I'm going to circle one. Here's one. Here's one. Here's one. Here's one. They're black trumpets. I put this slide here on purpose because black trumpets are one of the easiest mushrooms to identify. You find one of these, there's nothing else that looks like it. You can't confuse it for anything else. The hard part is actually seeing them. Now, if you've ever been on a trail after a mountain bike, or someone's got, you'll see that the bike has kicked up some soil. It's dark. You'll see like a streak of darkness. That's what this looks like. It looks just like a trail from left behind by a bicycle that stirred up the soil rather than, I've walked by these and then happened to return on the same trail. And I say, oh my God, I walked by and I picked them up, hopefully the next time around. So look for them starting mid to late summer into the fall. They like black soil. Think gentle slope in an area that doesn't get too much sun. Right, indirect, like think the northern kind of slope rather than the south side.
Like August?
Yeah, I would start, August would be ideal. Yeah, and they like oaks. So imagine you have these beautiful white oaks and there's like a gentle going down this way and there's a little bit of water. Yeah, that's where you're going to find these bad boys. All right.
Can you see, I couldn't see what they look like exactly. Is there a place there?
Well, I'd have to take you back up. So what these are, there's one. Whoop, come on. There. Ah,
The black one. It just doesn't want to.
there it is. There it is.
Oh,
So this guy, those are these.
Oh, all right.
They're about like that. Sometimes they get to like that, right? Okay. So,
Very fragrant.
and extremely fragrant. They are indeed. Come on. Now, this is the most important slide of the evening, okay? Because what I think there are multiple ways of organizing mushrooms. I think you'll thank me that I'm not going to go into the Linnaean binomial system, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Because even though that is an important thing to know is studying the natural sciences, it doesn't tell you much. I think, I'll be with you 1 second, I think it's much more productive in a broadest general way to think of mushrooms in terms of their lifestyles. Break them up by lifestyles. And fundamentally, there are 3 lifestyles for the mushrooms that we find in New England. The first lifestyle is parasitism. Parasitism is a relationship where one party benefits and the other party not only does not benefit, but is actually physically harmed. That's parasitism. And among the most common that we have here, the honey mushroom. How many of you have seen this? Yeah. They'll almost always be clustered, not like onesie twosies. You see like these, they're spread out. These will be clustered, and commonly they wrap around the base of the tree. Almost always hardwoods. The biggest one would be oaks. They love going after the oaks. And they're creating a rot between the trunk and the roots, a butt rot. So what does that mean for the tree? Eventually, wind will come by, it'll be too weak, and it'll come down. You may have heard of the humongous fungus in Oregon. Have you heard about that? The one that's like 100 square miles? I hate to break it to you, it's not a giant cap and stem mushroom. I was heartbroken. I was excited. You wouldn't have liked a satellite image of a giant mushroom in Oregon? No, it's under the soil. It's the mycelium. Remember I said the true body of the mushroom, of the fungus, is the mycelium. And when they've done studies at different points, they do the DNA analysis, they realize it's all the same individual of the species. It's spreading out. That's, and they're also, so the Armillaria malia, question I'll be inevitably asked, are they edible? It turns out this parasite is edible. And it's, there are certain ethnicities that really like these. Hint is, focus on the caps. Apparently these stems can be a little tough. So parasitism. Decomposition is exactly what it sounds like. So what I want to say here is this. When we went to school, high school, and take biology, all the focus is on photosynthesis, the miracle of photosynthesis. And it blows my mind to think, well, no, this is artificial. But those doors, I'm basically looking at carbon and water and a few other things thrown in there. That is the miracle of photosynthesis, is that the plants, with their chlorophyll, can transform carbon and water into sugars. And then these sugars into more complex sugars. So the sugars that give structure to the plant, the cellulose, and the sugars, the complex sugars that will make trees stand up, the lignans, are very complicated polysaccharides. We can't digest them. And animals that can, like cows, really depend on what?
Bacteria.
Well, they depend on the microbes. So you can actually think of each of their different stomachs as really just a different host community for those microbes. We don't get to do that. So that becomes for us bran. But thank goodness, now this is what it ties to photosynthesis. If all we had was photosynthesis, how far would life get? You'd absorb all the nutrients, everything would die, and it's all over. You ever go in the woods and you have to wonder, well, how come you can walk in the woods? What happened to all the trees and the branches and the twigs and the large trunks? Well, thank goodness for this fungus, because their enzymes are able to break down those complex polysaccharides. And that means that those nutrients get to be recycled through the soil into the plants again. So I like to think of it as yin and yang. So the photosynthesis and the decomposition are working together to make the miracle of life. Both as equal, I think of as equal partners. Decomposition, and you're typically going to see that on what? You're going to see it on the logs, on the sides of trees, etc. And then finally, perhaps the most interesting one, the one that's captured a lot of attention, you may have heard about the wood wide web and this interconnectivity. Well, let me break this down for you. So symbiosis means there's more than one party involved here, right? There's a relationship. So let's break down the word ectomycorrhizal. Sounds very impressive, but it's really simple. Ecto means around the outside. Myco refers to fungus. Rhizal refers to roots. Ectomycorrhizal fungi. So these chanterelles, sending their hyphae down, those hyphae are wrapping around, surrounding the rootlets of their tree partner. And there they do an exchange, where the mushroom provides water and nutrients like nitrogen, potassium, and other stuff. And in return, the tree gives it sugar on which it lives. This relationship is so important that estimates are that something 90% of trees have this kind of relationship. 80% of all terrestrial plants have this relationship. And it's so important that there are some arborists who say, you know what, roots are only there for structure. You know, we were told that it brings up water and stuff. Nah, that's the fungus doing that. The roots are structure. And it's so important to have this relationship. There's something, I've heard something as much as 40% of a tree's sugar production will go to its fungal partners. Right? That tells you something important is going on.
Would that mean that something like a sugar maple would have more edible mushrooms?
You might think so. So that's an excellent question. No, not necessarily, but you know it's sweet. But remember, the other stuff is sweet too, but not to us.
Yeah.
It's not the maples that have the most relationships with fungus. It's the oaks.
Said that a couple times.
Oaks have, and I'm going to pause for this. Because you brought it up. I love oaks. Because an oak tree is a system. It's never just an oak tree. You think about all the insects that live in there. You think about all the birds that are dependent, and the squirrels and animals. I mean, every tree. And then with the acorns. I mean, whole communities would die without the oak trees. And they can live a long time. So red oaks, black oak family, what, 150-something years, 200. White oaks up to 400 years. And they can live. Now, and this is what blows my mind. If you go to a place like Mount Wachusett, you can see this really clearly, right? North side, where the slopes are, what do you see? Hemlocks. What does that mean? You see the trees that are shade tolerant. They're going to be on the north side. It's going to be moister, and it's going to be shadier. What do you see? The south side's going to get the light. Guess where you see the oaks? It's not because they say, I like dry, thin soils. No. What they like is, I like being in a place where there isn't a whole lot of competition. That's why they're there, because they can survive and endure it. Is it a coincidence that the tree that can survive and endure dry, thin soils is also the one that has the most ectomycorrhizal relationships? I don't think so. Now, I just want to put a little comment there. That's me talking, not the scientific community. It may be, I'm just saying, I'm speculating, so don't go out here and Jonathan Crane said, blah, blah. Oak. So let me go back to this. So this one, you guys knew it. Some of you knew. Its common names are Indian pipe or ghost pipe. Its true name, well, it's not necessarily true, but the Linnaean name is Monotropa uniflora. It is a plant that does not have chlorophyll, hence it's that translucent white color. What it's doing is it's intercepting the mycelial network between these Russula mushrooms, we'll talk about them in a second, and whatever host tree that they're ectomycorrhizaling with. And it's just stealing the sugar. And it's stealing the sugar. That's why it's a parasite. Not returning anything, it's just stealing the sugar. So that's the Monotropa uniflora. You'll start seeing those real soon.
Are they edible?
I don't think they're edible, but you can make a tincture with them that is a powerful anesthetic, like for tooth pain or other stuff. Please do your own research and check that out. But I'm saying that's what people collect, and they do make tinctures with it.
Next time I need
Yep.
anesthetic.
Yep. So remember this. Everything about the show you can find. I'm not going to fool you with stuff that isn't available in Massachusetts or New England. And this is just the coarsest overview. Doesn't even begin to cover everything. But it's just I just want to whet your appetite for what the potential is out there this season. Let's talk about the Amanitas. So if you're into botany or plants, you know that there's a subcategory of botanists, people interested in orchids, right? And they're the real lunatics. Well, the same thing in mycology. So there's a subset in mycology who are really into Amanitas. And I think of them as the bathing beauties of the mushroom world. They're often very elegant, graceful, beautiful. They're also among the most deadly, the femme fatales. So I showed you earlier a picture. I said one of these is edible, one of these most deadly mushroom. And this is also one of the two most deadly mushrooms that are common in Massachusetts and New England. It's part of the destroying angel group. There's a number of species, the Bisporigera, the Amariverosa, etc. It doesn't matter because they all look very similar. You see the yellowish tones? That's an artifact of the camera. They're pure white. And that's part of the problem. They look beautiful. white cap, white veil, white stem, white base, like the ones you get in the store. It has to be good, right? Only the colored ones, the ones with bright colors are poisonous, right? No. So here's what happens. You eat this, about 4 to 6 hours later, gastrointestinal distress. You're in a lot of, I don't have to describe it, you can imagine it. A few hours later, you feel better. And you think, hey, I beat it. Right? Then 12 to 48 hours, you're in deep trouble. Because here's what happens. The amatoxin that these have inhibits RNA's ability to code proteins.
Jesus.
Yes. So guess what? Those organs that are made of proteins that are continually renewing, which is the liver and kidneys, are the first ones to go. The liver first, then the kidneys. So that's why you hear people who have this poisoning, they're getting liver transplants. If you suspect you've done this, the thing you want to do is get medical attention ASAP. And you'll probably live. You get that early as possible. Don't freaking wait. Because time is not on your side. Rumor, and I say rumor because I just read it's not fully confirmed, is that the possible antidote for this is extracted from milkweed, which is really interesting because milkweed is also toxic. Remember, monarchs eat the milkweed milk, and then they're toxic, and they have the bright color to tell the birds, don't eat me because if you do, you're going to die because I'm poisonous, right? But they get their poison from the milkweed. So just a few things I want you to notice about these amanitas. One is, there's a lot of this tissue on top. See all this stuff on here? On the edge of the margin here, on the in the base. Here, again, those warts, these cogs at the base. Here, we even, not only do you have the tissue on top, but there's a thing called a partial veil, that's underneath. And that veil, this one's protected the underside of the mushroom. It's protecting the gills until the spores are mature enough to reproduce. And then it falls away, and it leaves this little skirt up here called the partial veil. Another thing that you notice that all three of these amanitas have very different bases. This is this long, tapering, root-like structure. This one is just fat at the bottom and has cogged rings around it, usually 3 of them for that species I'll talk about in a second. And this one here, bulb with a sac. There's that loose tissue here that's also called a vulva, V-O-L-V-A. So they have all these distinguishing characteristics. But the biggest thing to understand is their universal veil. So when they're tiny little baby mushrooms, I'm going to have to act this out. I'm a little baby amanita, and there's a veil around me called universal veil. It's like, think of it as a very soft, thin eggshell. Okay? So what am I doing? I'm going to grow up. So my legs are kind of like the stem. My arms are going to pretend are the gills hiding in there. So my goal is I want to get up there and I want to do what? I want to get as much spores out there, so I want to spread my arms, my cap as open as possible because that drops all the spores, right? What happened to that eggshell? It's still there, but it's broken apart. So that's what all this stuff is that you see. Whoops. Over here, that's this stuff on the top. Over here, all that loose tissue is the remains of that veil. Now, this stuff can wash off in the rain. It's not part of the cap. It could just simply wash off. It's not attached. It could be rubbed off, etc. So the one in the middle is related to the most famous mushroom in the world. Right? If you ask a child, for the rest of you, to draw a mushroom, this is what they're going to draw. That red one with the white spots. So what the white spots are is just the remains of the universal veil, the crumbly stuff on the top. That's what that white stuff is. And then it's become abstracted to polka dots. So the Amanita muscaria, let's go, what is it called? The fly something mushroom. It was used traditionally, you put some in milk and you use it to attract and kill flies. Because it is toxic, it has a muscarine. It's not deadly toxic, just makes you real sick. Apparently, healers and shamans in around the Arctic Circle area use this mushroom to go into a trance for the healing trances. I don't understand how they do it without getting sick. They may have some special method of cooking or preparing it. I don't know. I do not recommend experimenting on this yourselves. So people have. So our version of the red one is this one. And we get them, but we never get them red. We get them yellow or orange. But that's what it is. This is the Mario mushroom, our New England version of the Mario mushroom. And you can see I put the keys on here to give you a sense of how big they can get. Yes, sir?
Do they have the same weird psychedelic effects where you're not sure how big something is? Because I thought that's the famous thing about the red ones, right?
Well, that's what Alice in Wonderland, I don't know if that really happens.
You don't actually
Besides,
go bigger, but yeah, the Super Mario one.
I would say if you're, I think the psychedelic effects are modest to non-existent, but you can do your own homework. Some people say, but
So the keys are really there.
I put the keys there, and I just for reference, right?
Are all three of those toxic?
No, well, I wouldn't eat this, but I don't know that it's toxic. This is mildly toxic. This is permanently toxic. This one here. So beautiful white mushroom, gorgeous. Okay. You can see I'm look at that smug look on my face. Yeah, mess with me. Let's see what's coming in your lunch tomorrow. Okay. So that's the amanitas. Boletes, unlike the gill mushrooms, boletes are cap and stem with pores and tubes. And I just want to show you the kind of range of texture and color that are possible. You can have something as boring as this, pallid little boring mushroom, but okay, but look at this, old man of the woods. Beautiful shaggy black hairs on the top, and then you really can't see it, but on the stem as well. And when they're fresh, what I can do is a magic trick is I cut it. And the flesh starts out like a light gray, but then turns pink, then red, then black, and it's really cool. These are edible, believe it or not, though most people that have tried it say it's not that great. This is beautiful. It's ruby red. When you find it, it'll be slick and shiny. And then this stipe will be what's called reticulate. It has 3D bas-relief netting on it. You know, this is not like the universal veil warts. This won't rub off. This is a part of the stem, and it's really pronounced. It can be brilliantly ruby red or brilliantly yellow on the reticulated part, but always that deep red here. And yeah, this gorgeous mushroom you will find in the woods here. And this is another.
Is it edible?
Is this one edible? It might be, but I'd have to look it up. This could be edible, but it's not like one of the leading desirable edibles. So if you imagine the spectrum from deadly poisonous to a delicious, desirable edible, there's a whole series in between where it's mildly toxic too. Yeah, you could eat it, but would you want to? You know what I'm saying? All right. And finally, I just want to show you this. I just love this. This one has a sulfur yellow color that turns pink on the cap. This will remain sulfur. See that? Remember before I was talking about the partial veil? This is also a partial veil, but it's not going to turn into a skirt. It's going to just crumble apart. It's this very fragile thing. I just love it for its gorgeous colors. The Pulverobolitus ravenellii, gorgeous mushroom.
The one, oh sorry, the old man of the woods one that you said that when it changes color when you open it.
Yeah.
Is it the oxidization or is it the breaking of
I
the
think
cells?
so. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's exposure to oxygen.
But the exterior doesn't have the same.
No. So the cells can be different from the peleus, the outside, and then what you have they call a trauma, the actual meat stuff on the inside can behave differently. Yeah. The russulas are in some ways the most perfect mushroom in the sense that they'll always be almost perfectly round, and then the stipes will be even, parallel, straight. They're extremely brittle. Their cell structure, instead of being like linear and offset like this to make it strong and bendable, tends to be spherical. And because of that, they're very brittle, break apart easily. If you throw it on the ground, they just shatter into many pieces. There's no bendability with them. Some are edible, particularly for people of Slavic, Russian, Central European, Eastern European background. These are very popular to pickle or brine and eat with black bread and vodka. I haven't tried it yet. I'm looking for a Russian friend who will introduce me to this. But I think both of these are edible. The red ones I wouldn't touch because there are dozens of different species and they're hard to tell apart without a microscope or DNA analysis. And among them are some that can make you violently ill, including the one called Russula emetica. And the emetica is the key that's an emetic to make you throw up. So you're going to see, I promise you, in a couple months from now, some of the earliest mushrooms that pop out will be these red russulas, many different species. and then some of these green ones. And the Varietas can have pink. Well, you could have olive and brown tones in the center, then you get pink and violet tones around the edges. And the reason I put this up here is because they often look like nebulas. And I just think they're gorgeous. I don't think that every mushroom has to be special because it gets you high or you can eat it. Sometimes it's just beautiful. And this one is a very beautiful mushroom. Closely related to the russulas and very similar in shape and stature are the Lactarius. But what distinguishes these bad boys, the word lact is the hint, lactate, lactation, milk. They exude a latex, a liquid. And if you can look, I know it's kind of difficult, but here, you see those droplets? So there are droplets. I probably took a knife blade. Sometimes I just use my fingernail. And then the Lactarius will exude. Now this particular one, this is the same mushroom. This mushroom is this mushroom 30 seconds later. So you'll notice that this latex came out, and then in this particular species, the Lactifluus volimus, it stains the tissues brown. So this latex, it can be white, it can be clear, it can be both, and that's called whey. It can be yellow, it can be green, it can be orange, it can be red, it can be blue. Also, it could change color. It could start white and turn yellow. It could be yellow to turn green. Also, it could do interesting staining reactions. Like we saw, white but stains the tissues brown. This is a favorite of mine for its beauty. It's got a velvety cap, velvety stem. The latex is white, but it stains the gills pink. Pink. I mean, this stuff gets really weird. I don't know if this one's edible, but these two are among the best edibles out there. And what I love about them, two things I love. One, the insects don't like them. So some of the other ones that you're prized at, you're so excited, you bring them home, and then you find out there's larval tunnels all the way through it. You can't eat it. That's a big disappointment. It happens to mushroom people all the time. But they don't like the latex so much. So these will be bug-free, and they have a quality of crisping up in the pan. There are not many mushrooms that get crispy, but these do. So Lactifluus volimus, Lactifluus hygrophoroides, and there's a third one, the Corrigus. All three of them exude a lot of latex and are absolutely delicious. This volimus gets its name because when I do this live in a walk, and I cut it, I stand like this because it'll just drip, it'll like run. And it smells like fish. So if I get it on my hands, that's it. I'm fishy for the rest of the day. Now, strangely enough, even though the latex smells very fishy, when you cook it, there's no fish smell, no fish taste. It truly is delicious. I highly recommend. So if you're interested in that, when you get your field guide, do a little reading on this so you get to recognize them because they're common, and other mushroom people will pass them by, but you won't. Courtnerius is one of the largest families of mushrooms, and they're distinguished by two things. One is that their spores tend to be rust red brown, like a blood red, beautiful. And the other thing is related to their partial veil, like we saw before with the Amanita that had like skirt-like texture. Well, these have a cortina or web-like texture. Do you see those threads underneath? And then what happens as they age, when that collapses, what happens is those threads tend to fall and wrap around the stem. And they're a little bit sticky. So what happens is as the spores drop, the sticky remnants of the web will pick up the color. So that's why you see a little pink here. That's from the collapsed cortina that's trapped some of the rusty red, blood red spores. And you can actually see some of them inside the gills here. So let me tell you, this is one of the first Courtneriuses. It'll pop up in early to mid-June. Unfortunately, you can't eat it. It's got a corrugated cap, and then when you pick it, you pull it, make sure you get the whole thing, get your finger underneath it, and you get this really cool bulb at the bottom, which most many don't have. So it's, but it's a distinct characteristic of this guy here. This is one of my favorite mushrooms, and I just want to show you what happens when they get dry. That's the same mushroom. And you can see, it's just, I'm not going to even pass around. It's just brown. This is what happens. So this one I love because it's got this kind of yellow-brown, kind of boring, nothing special. Then you flip it over, and it's got the most beautiful red color you've ever seen. This is a color that Frank Lloyd Wright used a lot, that beautiful, deep brown-red color, red-brown. It's just gorgeous. This one you're going to see late August, early September, the Cortinarius iodes. It's a small mushroom about that big, maybe yay wide, slippery cap, shiny, purple, but then with these yellow spots, sometimes a big yellow splash here. It's not edible, but it is beautiful, and it's relatively common. You're going to see it late this summer. Now that I've told you about it, you will find it. And then you're going to be out with your friends, and they're going, oh, look at that beautiful purple mushroom, and you're going to go, that's the Cortinarius iodes. And your friends will be so impressed with you. Okay, so that was just kind of a general overview of some of the possible things you might see. Now, let me talk about some specific mushrooms. All right, this mystery. The one on the left is Flammulina velutepiece. It's an edible, it's a decayer, grows on wood, and it will fruit through the winter. It's one of the few mushrooms that'll do that. And that's one of the reasons, so now winter's over, but you can sometimes find these under snow and ice, and their distinguishing characteristic is this velvet quality, velvet brown on the stem here. In Asian supermarkets, these are raised as called enoki, E-N-O-K-I, and they're thin white mushrooms with tiny white caps. You may have had it, in a soup or something in an Asian, right? That's the enoki, but in the wild, they cultivate them like that. In the wild, they grow like this, and they turn brown. This is the Galerina marginata, and it's the other of the two most poisonous that are commonly found. It also grows on logs. It's about the same size, similar colors, and sometimes it could be found on the same log. Yeah, so you know what? I would say for beginners, don't bother hunting for this, because you might pick up this. Now, there are distinguishing characteristics. You may notice, the sharp-eyed among you may have noticed here, 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 there's a ring. That ring is what's left over from, all say it with me, the partial veil, right? And the veil fell away. Now, here's the bad news. They say, oh, okay, but I know, as long as it doesn't have a ring, sometimes the ring washes off. So you got to go a little deeper than that. So edible on the left, death on the right. Turkeys. Now, this is something on purpose. You can get that there. And let's see. There's an extra one here. Good. Let me bring that up. Okay. You get this, and oh, good. I need those. Good, good, good. And I want to give this to someone else. I'm going to start with you because you haven't had a chance to start yet. And then finally, one other lucky soul. Nope. Hold on. Okay, good. And who am I going to give this to? Who wants to do this? Who wants to do this? All right. Now, the reason I did this is because on the worst drought days or in the early miserable days, so this is, T.S. Eliot was right, April is the cruelest month because it's spring, and yet nothing's out there yet, right? So it's cruel. The season really doesn't really begin. You say, yeah, June. You have a table that looks like this. There's not much out there. July, second week of July is when things kick in. But these you could see all year round, all through the winter, and you see these all the time. Those little fan-like mushrooms that grow around decaying, either dead standing snags or fallen stuff on the ground, and always kind of wrapped around. There's usually tons of them, right? Not just onesie-twosie. And they all have, not only have the similar, all three of these have that similar fan-like shape, they also are what we call zonate. They have those rings of color, those zones of color on them. So how would you tell these mushrooms apart? Well, this is how. The true turkey tail has tubes and pores. So when you look through the magnifying glass, you should see patterns of many holes. Who thinks they have the true turkey tail? True turkey tail will have the pores. The false turkey tail, Sterium austria, this one's white. As they age, it'll turn beige. That's a hint. It's going to be smooth without tubes of pores. It's going to be smooth. Remember I said earlier, the most primitive, smooth surface, but as of evolution, tubes and pores, smooth. Then we get to this, the Trichaptum biforme, which is probably the most common, known as the purple tooth, so it has a purple teeth. So the teeth are what the fertile surface is that produces the spores. Hint here, the purple color fades fast and turns brown. Okay? So I'm going to ask, from the people who are holding these, who's going to be courageous enough to say what they think they have of these three? Do, 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 do. What do you have?
This is the false.
It is a false one. Bring it up closer to your eye. So I'm going to tell you, so you look, I want you to see that surface. Now, who's got what here? What do you have, sir? You think this is, and I'm afraid no. So what's happened here is the teeth have been corrupted and not very easy to see, but you can see it's turned brown. But sir, there's a special prize with this particular Trichaptum biforme. And you ready for this? This mushroom actually has mushrooms growing on it. Yes, I want you to do this. This is going to be hard. Look at it kind of sideways, like I'm doing, across the surface, and you're going to see tiny little black hairs. Those are not black hairs. They're called fairy pins. They're mushrooms, Pheocalycium polypurium. It's an actual mushroom growing on the mushroom, and they're tiny as heck. So you're going to use, if you want to see it, you would have to use the smaller of these and get in there. Ah, I see them. You want to try? Yeah. Give it a try. I want you guys to give it a try. What do you have? Which one do you think you have? You have, so you actually have the other Trichaptum biforme. It's turned brown. Okay, great. And you can keep passing that. And ma'am, what do you have?
Turkey tail?
You have the turkey tail. Ding, 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 ding. This is the true one. It's got the pores underneath. Good. You can keep passing that around. I just ask you that when you're done seeing it, make sure, I want everyone to have a chance to take a look. Just make sure you pass all this stuff forward. So when I want the first person who finds the fairy pins to shout out.
I'm sure this isn't like a fungal snipe hunt.
I promise you it's there. I promise you I would not do that to you. By the way, the green stuff you see on top of these, if you feel it, you see it's a rough surface. That green stuff is algae. And the algae is just opportunistically, they're all in the air. We're breathing some right now. They're landing here and finding this as a good home to stay in. All right. So those are the real and the jive turkeys. How many people know about Otzi, the Iceman? Yes. Yes, in the Alps, so in the 90s, a couple of hikers found this guy, doing the dance in the ice. And apparently he has been there for about 5,000 years, so 3,000 before the Christian era. And among other things he was carrying was a leather pouch, and inside the leather pouch there were remnants of 2 mushrooms. Both of them we can find here in New England as well. Okay? So one of them, I know you've seen this. It's hoof-shaped on the sides of trees. It used to be called Fomus fomentaris. Now it's excavatus. The tinder polypore. So unlike other mushrooms, like this guy, appears once, a couple weeks, dies, and it's gone. These are perennials. So the latest, the most contemporary one is the lowest level. That's the fertile surface, and that'll usually be a lighter color. But each of these rings represents another year of growth. The thing that's interesting about this, and the reason he was carrying it, is that if you scoop the dry flesh out, it's a perfect tinder. It lights a fire really fast. The other thing is, once it's scooped out, you can carry fire in it. You can carry a burning ember. And we know that Native Americans would carry fire using these. And you can still do that today. The other thing is the birch polypore. I know you've seen these. It's a shelf fungus. It's got soft, rounded edges. This is really young, so it's got the beige on top. But the older ones are great. You've all seen this, right, on birches? Like a dead birch standing, and you'll see tons of them on there. Well, allegedly, this has anti-parasitic properties. And we know that poor Otzi had intestinal parasites. So we suspect he was carrying this as medicine. So this is medicine to treat his intestinal parasites, which I think is really interesting. So there are mushrooms that are carnivores. And mostly it's the pleurotus, the oyster mushrooms. And some of them, they're hyphae, they make a little noose. They make a circle, they make a noose. And nematodes are tiny microscopic worms. When one of them comes up to the noose, like unbelievably fast, like millionths of a second. It triggers it, snaps it, and strangles it and holds it. And then that fungus will send a hyphae to penetrate the nematode and eat it from the inside out. This is how, the reason it's a strategy to get nitrogen. So it's very similar in strategy to the, what do you call it, the Venus flytrap? Same thing. They're growing bogs, low nutrient. They need to get nitrogen. That's how they get it from insects. All right, I said earlier that there are 3 lifestyles. Remember, okay, quiz time. 3 lifestyles, what are they? Tell what? So decomposing is one. Parasitic's the other. What's the third? The big one, the symbiotic. So just think symbiotic. That's good enough. Ectomycorrhizal symbiosis. There's actually another one, arbuscular mycorrhizal symbiosis. And the reason I'm not talking to you about it, because they don't produce mushrooms that show up above ground. So just very quickly as a sidebar. Maple trees associate with arbuscular mycorrhizal. But they don't, that's a kind of fungus that doesn't produce fruiting bodies above the ground. So if you see a lot of maples, unless they're dead maples with decomposers on them, you're not going to find a lot of mushrooms because they don't have those associations. Imagine my brokenheartedness. There's a beautiful cemetery in Groton with all these older trees. And I thought, oh, this would be a great place to live for mushrooms. They're all maples. You know, so no good. So these are not different species. They're just different types. I just want to point out, so lichen is a combo organism. It's not one thing. It's always at least 2 partners and maybe 3 or more. So always is a fungus that provides basically the foundation, the structure. It holds it together. And when you say, well, what value does that have to its partner? So the partner is going to be either an algae or a cyanobacteria. And what both of those can do is photosynthesize, produce sugars. So they get sugars, but what do they? So they produce sugars, and the fungus part gets to live off the sugar. What is the fungus giving the algae or the cyanobacteria?
Water.
Yeah, a safe home that's often wet. Because imagine how vulnerable algae would be floating around in space. So reproductively, what actually happens is the fungal part that reproduces creates a structure and then attracts an algae, and then they form. It's incredibly incredibly complicated. But you typically see them in 3 ways. Crustose are the ones you can hardly scrape off. They're really like often on granite and stone and different colors, and they're just right on top. Foliose is leaf-like, and they're the most common. You've seen that many times, including rock tripe. Anyone see the rock tripe? Those look like the leaves that are stuck to rocks, but they're not leaves. They're actually a lichen. And then finally, the ones that have branches. I often find these British soldiers in disturbed areas, like underneath power lines. Right? And they'll have like gray-green, olive-green stems, and then these beautiful red tops. This is the fertile surface, is the red part there. They're very pretty and just nice to find. I just wanted to introduce that when you're looking at lichen, you're also looking at fungi. Another 3 specific, heal, eat. Which one's healing, which one's eat, which one's the die for? Well, remember I talked about Ganoderma sugae earlier? I showed you in one of the first slides. So this is, they emerge, they always associated with hemlock. That's where the word sugae comes from. They start out as little blobs, little white blobs, look like bubble gum coming out. Then they expand in these shelf-like structures. The most recent is the light-colored white stuff, and then the older stuff is dark. Eventually, this will all turn that burgundy color you've seen in the woods. So this is alleged to be a medicinal plant. It's called, I think, the mushroom of life in China. It's very popular in Asia and very common in Asian markets. If you're interested in this and you want to make a tincture because you're interested in medicinal mushrooms, start looking for these mid-May. You want to find hemlock groves with some old hemlocks there, some dying or dead hemlocks. That's where you're going to find the Ganoderma sugae. I'm going to go to the opposite end, and this is a heartbreaker because it's a big, robust mushroom. It's got this beautiful velvety cap, velvety stem, weird shape. Notice the ratio of the cap is so small related to the stem. I always think of these like French workmen with berets and leather aprons, right? Yeah. I mean, they have that, and they're very robust, but unfortunately, they're not edible. They'll just make your stomach sick. They are a dyeing mushroom, though. People do use these for dye, and you'll start seeing these in mid-June. And then another of the earliest ones is this beautiful mushroom that's associated with eastern white pine. And we got tons of that in Massachusetts. I'm sure you've seen plenty of eastern white pine. You see the pine, look for these guys. It has a nickname, painted Sewillis, because of the beautiful red fibers on the cap and on the stem here. Yes, it is edible. Yes, it is an edible one. It's not like a top, but it is edible. I don't often eat it because most of the time the bugs have got there before I do, and it's really hard to get it.
What color does the dye one use?
It depends on the mordant that you would use, and I'm not sure with this. I think it is in the kind of browny yellow area. I'm not 100% certain. There are other dyeing mushrooms like that semi-sanguineous I showed you with the beautiful red is also a mushroom used for dyeing, as is this beautiful mushroom that you can see in the winter. And whoever's got a lens, look at check out the patterns on that. So I've just asked him to look at the fertile surface. He's holding it correctly, and that's it. I always know when it comes to focus, when someone says, oh wow, I know he's found it. And he's going to pass that around so you can have that oh wow experience as well. So that's the Trametes cinnabarinum, and believe it or not, that'll grow even through the winter. Usually like branches about yay thick, about an inch thick in diameter. Two of the earliest cap and stem mushrooms that you'll start seeing in June, late May, June, and I'm sure you've seen this if you walk in the woods. The Megacolybia runmanii is known as the platyphyll because it could get like that big, right? White gills, white spores, very thin. You notice that the cap, that skin is called a peleus, and it tends to break. So when they're younger, it just makes little lenticels. But as it gets older, you can see it splits. This is allegedly edible. I've never tried because I wouldn't bother. There's between the gills and that skin is almost no flesh. So you put these in the pan, it just probably melts into nothing. Why bother eating them? But you will see them early on. Similar, a little bit smaller, found growing on wood, the Pluteus cervinus, the Pluteus mushroom. And this one, if you look carefully into the gills, you'll begin to see a little hint of pink. So it does have pink spores, a little hint of pink. Another thing that's notable, you'll notice that the gills don't quite reach the stem. There's a free space. These are called free gills. So there's a ball and socket quality to Pluteus cervinus. If you rock it too much, it pops right out, just like the ball coming from its socket. Yes, it is edible, but it's kind of like what I call a why bother mushroom. But you'll start seeing both of these, maybe depending on the rain and the temperature, late May, but certainly in June. Some other ones you're going to see early on. Swamp beacons. Anyone ever seen these? This will be in still water, bogs, swamps, or even little, you ever see like sometimes a stream, there's like a section that gets isolated. Where the water's still, look for these guys. They're short mushrooms with a yellow or orange cap that almost looks neon. Not edible or anything. It's just really pretty, and it's just fun to look for as you walk in the woods because you'll start seeing them soon. Like there might be some now. I was looking today. I didn't find any, but in the wetlands, try looking for that because they're really neat. Another early mushroom that comes out is the pheasantback, the Cereoporus squamosus, which is in fact a polypore. And you can see the pores and tubes here, and they're actually even beginning to run down the stipe. That's called decurrent when it comes down the stipe like that. Beautiful pattern here. As it ages, it gets very leather-like, but when they're young, it's allegedly a decent edible. As they get older, you're going to want to cut away the thick stuff and just eat the soft stuff if you're interested in it. That'll start coming out in June. And then another pink, do you see inside here? You see inside the gills? Definitely pink spores. It's the Entoloma strictius. You're going to see tons of this throughout the summer. They're going to start popping out in maybe 4 to 6 weeks. Little lines here. Like the Pluteus has pink spores. This one also has that little nipple or papillate quality on the pinched, that little point here in the middle. And this is another early one. It might be edible, but it's one of those things that's like a not desirable edible kind of thing. So let's talk edibles. So that in fact, is the president of the Boston Mycological Club. And you can see here, chanterelles, black trumpets, chicken of the woods, tubies, Craros tubiformis, and I'm not sure, gypsies or something over there. I'm not sure what we got there. So we got a whole table full, and he's obviously very excited. All right, let's start. The reason I'm starting with the oysters is so there are 2 edibles and a maybe. These are the 2 edibles, and this is the maybe. The reason I say maybe is there were reports of poisonings or negative effects in Japan that make people wonder maybe this one shouldn't be. But we're going to talk about the other 2 and how to distinguish it from this. So the most common, the most famous oyster mushroom is this one, the Pleurotus austratus, and it's associated with cool weather. And this will fruit through the fall, November, December even. In fact, even in the winter, February, March, when we have warm spells, you can sometimes find these. Decomposers, sides of trees, and their favorite tree, sugar maples. So where will you find this? Farm roads. Nope. You could, yes, Vermont. Yes, what I'm saying, you don't have to go all the way to Vermont. Massachusetts, think farm roads, where farmers put the sugar maples as a kind of windbreak. They use this after the chestnuts and elms died. They planted Norway maples or sugar maples. And sometimes you'll look and you'll see these. They'll always be in a group. You'll notice how the stem comes out from the side, right? It's lateral. Notice how thick and robust they are. Compare the thickness with this. Notice you could see light here. Do you see that where I'm pointing? You see the light? There's a translucency. There is no translucency here. So there's a tell. The real Pleurotus austratus, think cool weather, thick, robust, light isn't getting through it. This is a warmer weather, think summer, early fall, but mostly summer, Pleurotus pulmonarius. It is edible. Notice that as opposed to the austratus, much thinner, it's wavier. This is more like a shell, like a band shell. These are wavy, like flowers. This has that band shell quality, but it's super thin. And that's what the tell for this guy. So oysters, incredibly popular edible. So you can look for them almost year-round. Yeah, he's got one. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Mid-April.
You got it. You found that in April? Are they alive or dead?
April 13th, I think. So,
God. Wow. Okay, so it's April. I'm going to get to you in a second. So the reason I ask is sometimes you see them, but they've been around a while, and you're bummed out. You pulled your car
now
over.
they've been around for a while.
They could, yeah, exactly, right? They're still there. Okay.
I was just wondering, I know where to find some of those here at my dad's house, and I see them all the time, but can I just like literally cut it off the tree? And
Yes.
it's fine? Yeah? Okay.
Absolutely. Just
then-
cut them off the tree.
Yeah.
Now, be careful. Like, I don't know if the neighbor's got, saltpeter loaded into the shotgun.
No, I've seen
So-
other people cut them off the trees.
Yeah,
It's on
just-
a hiking trail. and
Yeah,
it's,
hiking trails,
yeah.
go for it. Private property,
Yeah.
respect the privacy, okay? All right. Nope. Nope. Okay, I have to talk about morels. And I'm going to talk about, the reason this guy's smiling is because he was the only person on the walk who found one. Why? Okay, so I have to talk about morels because if you're on Facebook, all your friends in the Midwest in the next week or two are going to be showing off bucket loads of their morels. But they have 2 things that we don't really have a whole lot of here. One is elm trees. Their biggest associate is elms. We got hit by the elm blight, right? So that is already a ding. Now they also like apple trees, which we do have orchards and old orchards and lots of those, and ash trees. But ash trees, yeah, they're suffering. Now, the other thing they like is alkaline or sweeter soils. The soils, most of our soil here, acidic or sweet? It's more acidic. Why? Because granite, baby. We live in a granite environment. There are seams of limestone. The southwest corner, Massachusetts, there has something. And there are occasionally spots, like in Bolton, Massachusetts, where they harvested lime, probably to use for the orchards, right, on the soil. Now, their time is typically like second and third week of May. So the truth is you're not going to find a lot of them here. But there are occasionally spots. All right? Another hint. glaciers come from the north going south, right? So they're coming from the north, and typically they kind of ride up, and then on the south side it's kind of like steeper drop. What do? They do a phenomenon, or they did many, I'm talking 15,000 years ago. They pick, right? They pick the stone at the top and it breaks. So what it does, it ultimately exposes minerals that are deep inside the rock. Now, south slope, do you know what a talus slope is? So ever see at the bottom of a cliff, there's a slope at the bottom that's made up of broken rock? That's called a talus slope. Now here, if it's wooded, it means trees and plants will be growing on it, so it's not going to be so obvious. But if you look carefully, you know that you're kind of thinking topographically, you see a talus slope on the south side. Now start looking for plants like bloodwort, hobblebush, basswood trees. These are indicators of sweeter soils. So that may be a sign that, hey, you might get lucky. You might actually find a morel in middle May. So get ready to be disappointed. You can start trying and frustrated. So my true story is, have a spot. I found them on Mount Wachusett, and last year I went 3 times and found nothing, that same spot. And the third last time, I was frustrated. I go visit my friend of mine who was doing some yard work in his yard. I get there and he says, hey, I want to show you some stuff I did today. I'm like, okay, what do you got? I look down. There's a couple of morels. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And what had happened was he had a couple of apple trees from the previous homeowner, and he just cut them down. That's the thing, right? Because they like the dead or dying tissue. That's when they start coming up. There were some apples. It was associated. Up it comes. Okay, a little bit more about apples. So apple orchards are a popular place for people to look for these. There's a caveat. Before DDT, they sprayed with arsenic or lead. Problem with those is that they stay in the soil. They're heavy metals. They don't. And guess what? The mushrooms suck them up. Now, I met the author of a scientific paper who studied arsenic levels in orchard morels. And yes, they can be toxic, but we only know of one person who's actually died from apple orchard morels. But this person ate pounds of morels every day for years. So do you understand the picture here? We're not going to do that. So if you found onesie, twosie morels in an apple orchard, I would. Arsenic is not like cyanide. It's not an instant killer. It's an accumulative poison, right? Cumulative poison. I'm not an expert on toxic, but a little bit of arsenic, what's it going to do to you, right? So, all right. True or false morel? So how do we tell the difference? So let's look. So this is a true morel. Notice it has chambers. No chambers, instead it's coral-like. Notice this is rounded. These, side comes up, flattens out, goes down again. Just like a sine wave. Boop, like flat, like this. It'll always have that, looks like someone cut the ridges on these, shaved it, right? Also, if I were to cut this in half, the stem will always be hollow with a morel. You cut this stem in half, there'll be stuff in it. In fact, that's what the quality is called. It's called stuff. They'll have all this thready stuff in there. You don't want, this is edible. This one actually, this is a little old. I wouldn't eat this one, but this species is edible. This is a gyromitra. There's a few of them, and it's not edible. It has a chemical in there that's used that's a component in jet fuel. So some brainiac said, you know what you can do? You can still eat them. Boil them. Okay, you boil them, and you fill your house with toxic gas. Seriously. People have gotten sick. So don't touch, you could touch them, but don't eat these. Come on. People, get it together. All right, 2 of these. We have chanterelles in 2 pictures and not chanterelles in 2. Who wants to guess? Chanterelle or not chanterelle?
Chanterelle.
Chanterelle. Okay, I'm going to ask why in a minute.
You said it differently.
Okay, how about this? Chanterelle or not chanterelle?
At the same time, I don't know.
Chanterelle or not chanterelle?
No.
Not chanterelle. Chanterelle or not chanterelle? No. Chanterelle?
Yes.
Okay, you guys are good. All right, so notice the floral quality. Okay? And we're going to talk about, let's get into this. Let's solve this. So the first mystery, how did I know that gentleman did not have, I knew for 2 reasons. One, the date, September. Chanterelles are an early summer mushroom. They're one of the first to come out, early June. By mid-August, they're gone. So if this is September, I knew that that wasn't right. The other tell is chanterelles don't grow on wood. They're not a decomposer. They're an ectomycorrhizal symbiotic mushroom. They grow in association with a tree host. Okay, so they grow on the ground. They're called terrestrial, right? Not on wood, as this guy's doing. But there's some other things. The most important, which is the gills, and this is going to be crazy. A real gill is like a blade. Up, flat, down, right? Like think of it like a blade. This is a blade. This is like a chanterelle is like this. It's rounded and it's also short. And if you look here, I know it's hard to see, but notice it's not particularly deep. The edges are not sharp. They're shallow. And if you rub them, they're not going to come off easily. So true chanterelles have false gills. False chanterelles have true gills. Okay? But this is easier. Remember, terrestrial, wood. The other thing is the meat, the flesh, is always going to be white or just pale yellow. Never orange or brown. And it'll always be firm flesh. It's never going to be hollowed out like that. Hygrophilus aurantiaca, it's kind of orange. It's very pretty. I like finding them because it's pretty to look at, but not edible. These are edible. In fact, what I do, I don't cut them. I just break them apart like string cheese. No, seriously. They break out real easy, and that's much easier than cutting them apart. Chick of the woods. This is a very common, and it's a great mushroom for beginners. And you'll notice there's two different species here, but they're both edible. They're both decomposers. The Laetiporus sulphureus is distinguished by orange top, sulfur yellow on the bottom side, as you can see here, with little tiny pores. And you see how they grow? Rows and rows of shelves. The Laetiporus cincinnatus grows at the base of a tree or on roots that you can't see underground. And it's rosette and kind of floral in its shape. And it's pink on the top and white on the bottom. Both of them are perfectly edible. Now, edibility. Just like vegetables and other kinds of foods, something that's most people will eat and you say, that's edible. But there's some people who just can't deal with like Brussels sprouts, for example. Right? Same thing with mushrooms. You say, it's edible, but you don't know, is it good for you? So one of the rules for edibility is even you know what it is, you know it's edible. If you haven't eaten it before, you start with a little bit. Seriously. See how you do. It feels good. You eat a little bit more, but you don't pig out. And then you wait in the morning. And the next day you wake up and nothing's happened. You're in good shape. Yes?
So with the bigger ones like this, I know you were talking about how some of them were like older or harder. With the bigger ones like this, how would you choose what part of it to eat?
The hint is the softer stuff versus the firmer, leathery stuff. Plus, the outer edges will be the freshest. So if you find something that you think, oh, it's edible, but it's gotten big, if the outer edges are still soft, but in good shape, you can cut those off and leave the harder stuff behind. Okay. You also want the color, you want it to look good. Just like vegetables you pick in the store. What you don't want to see, and never want to see, I don't want to see any of that olive green or gray discoloration. That's bacteria. Okay, so you cut that away or leave it alone. And also, you want them fresh. I mean, if it looks like it's been out there a while and slugs have started eating it, leave it be for... No, I swear, I'll be on walks at the end of the walk, do a table talk. I'll hold up a mushroom. There'll be things dripping from it. There'll be flies buzzing around it. And I swear, someone will inevitably ask, is that edible? I mean, seriously. I mean, just use common sense. So both of these are edible. There's a third species called urinensis that grows on conifers, and that one is more controversial. Some people get sick, most people don't. But looks very much like this. So I say, if you see these two, go for it. So what's happened here with these slides is I had a whole bunch of things where it was supposed to appear, and it doesn't work. But it doesn't matter because I memorized this. So suppose you want to go out and you want to look for mushrooms. What do you need? A basket. Why? You want horizontal versus vertical because you don't want to stack them all on top of each other and ruin them. Paper bags. You want to keep the individual, or say you found a cluster, a bunch of chanterelles, and you put them in one paper bag. Not plastic because you don't want the mushrooms to sweat. Paper. A mushroom knife is nice, a knife to cut. And the other thing sometimes is a weed puller. If you're looking for mushrooms to identify when you get home, You want the complete mushroom, including the base. Remember when I showed you the amanita, how they had 3 very different bases? That's an important identification tell, so you want the complete thing. So either get your finger under there, or I even have a weed puller. And dig in, pop it out. If, like the chanterelles, you 100% know it's a chanterelle, can't be anything else, you don't have to look it up. Cut. That way, you're not bringing the dirt with you into your bag, and you don't have to clean it out of the gills of your mushroom later. So you keep it nice and clean. That's pretty much it. And then for yourself, you need some bug spray. Just but that's basically all you need to go out and hunt for mushrooms. Yes, ma'am.
Do you dry your mushrooms? To keep them over the winter?
Yes, I do. And some species dry better than others. Like for instance, the black trumpets are a perfect drying mushroom, and you don't need a dehydrator for those. What you do is you clean them, and yes, you can wash mushrooms. Don't ignore it. Yes, you can get them wet. You can wash them. Dry them. Spread them out on paper, on a surface like a large table. Set a fan on low and have it blow across them. You want that moving air. They're dry when they're crisp. I mean it. They should be like a potato chip. You don't want any bendiness. You really want it dry. Then it's safe to put into, I use bell jars like people use for canning and stuff. And yes, I keep them. And then when you want to cook them, just resuscitate them with boiling water. Just put them, and they're good. There's not a whole lot of meat with black trumpet, so I use them as a flavoring. I use them for sauces, and my favorite thing to put them is chicken cacciatore. So I'll have button mushrooms, plus I'll have for flavor, the black trumpets. And what it does is it adds a floral top note. So it's a floral quality. Whereas if I were eating porcini, that's an umami quality. Like shiitake, everyone knows that's umami. So there's different ranges. So that's all you need to hunt for mushrooms. Spore prints. All right. So, beautiful thing. Ooh, ooh, ah. Thank you. Now, the range of colors, lots in the browns, sometimes the pinks, but my favorite ones are the really dark ones. Like black, brown, purple, black. Yeah. It gets really pretty. So, and now you notice what happens is that the spores make a deposit that echoes or mimics the pattern of the gills or the tubes above it. And this is what you do. I like to use index cards because they're a bit meatier than paper. You take your mushroom and you would cut off the stem. And I'm going to pretend this is a cap and stem mushroom. It's not, but I pretend I cut off that fertile surface down on your paper. Then you cover it with a cup because the spores are extremely small and lightweight, and the breeze will just blow them away. Then you wait 4 hours to overnight. Then you get ready, you lift this off, and if you're lucky, you pick it up, and there'll be what you see here. There'll be a print. And then what you can do is let it dry. Let it dry, and then use hairspray to fix it. And that way the the spores don't come off the paper. And that's what I've done. That's why I can bring them here. Hairspray is the same thing as artist fixative, but it costs about 1/5 of what artist fixative costs, and then they add a little perfume, which is obnoxious. But hairspray from the dollar store is perfect for this. And I just think they're fun. I do it. Sometimes I do it for identification. I don't know what it is. Many of the guides will start with spore print color as your first cut. And if you notice on the edge of this, you see the different colors of the pages? All right, so the first one that's lavender is actually all the white. So the most common color is no color. But just like snowflakes, we see them as white when they're really clear. Same thing. It's called hyaline. It's really transparent, but we see it as white. That's the most common. But then some of the others, pink, then it goes into the brown, and then it goes into the black, etc. So that's helpful identification. Little trick. One thing that's frustrating is, you need the spore print before you can identify the mushroom, but then I have to wait till tomorrow morning. So a trick is, in the field, sometimes mushrooms will be piled on top of other mushrooms. Lift it up. Maybe it deposited something on the mushroom below or on the duff. I've seen white powder all the time in the woods, like on leaves. So look around. Maybe it already deposited. There's your spore color. Make note of it. Another thing is look inside the gill. Sometimes you get a hint, I see some color in there because it's matured a bit, started to come, and you'll see some color in there. All right, what else we got? Nope. FAQs, notice it's blank. It shouldn't be blank. So let me go over them. So when is the season? Typically, now, and as I said earlier, yeah, it could start in June, but it doesn't really. Second week of July, the first week of November. Think of that as rough. Sometimes a little longer, depending on first frost. Sometimes a little earlier on the other side. But I'll tell you, I'll go out July 4th weekend, and I'll still be disappointed. The second week is where it really starts to happen. What I've already told you, so edibility. What do you need to do if you want to eat edible mushrooms? First thing, there is no secret magic trick. Like boil the mushrooms, put a silver spoon in there, the spoon turns black. None of that works. All of it is BS. The only way it works is you have to know the identifying characteristics of the mushrooms you want and the identifying characteristics of the lookalikes you don't want. So those two things. So that's why we spend a lot of time talking about the chanterelles. Remember, we talked about the characteristic of the chanterelles, but also the characteristics of the jack-o'-lantern and the false chanterelle. By the way, the jack-o'-lantern will always be larger, will always have round caps, and will always be clustered. They're not edible, they're toxic. But if you find one, put it in a paper bag and put it in a dark closet, and then you walk in the closet, wait a few minutes for your eyes to adjust the light, then open the bag. Cross your fingers. If you're lucky, you'll see a green bioluminescence. With the, if you're lucky, right? Okay? So you have to, so for edibles, you have to be 100% certain of the ID. Then, if you always cook them, don't eat raw mushrooms. There's a couple of exceptions I'll talk about in a second, but cook them. Even the button mushrooms. I know there are restaurants that have like salad bars. Don't trust that. Cook them. Because bacteria love mushrooms. The perfect ground for them. You're going to cook them. If it's new to you, try a little bit and then move on. In terms of learning more about mushrooms, I recommend joining a club. And the reason is for $20 a year, they're going to send you newsletters. They're going to invite you to webinars and lectures. But the most important thing is that in the season, they have a walk calendar. So each club, the BMC, I think, hosts about 14 walks. The Pioneer Valley hosts 12 to 14. Those are a lot of walks. You could pick something close to you, what have you. And you're just going to learn. There'll always be a walk leader. Often they have an ID person, someone who's really expert. Will do a table talk. And then there'll just be other members of the club who are very knowledgeable who will help you. In terms of books, let's talk about books. This is what I recommend. If you're just casually interested, I love this one. That's the one on the far left. And the reason I love this, it's got 95% of the mushrooms in New England. I know I'm running a little late. I'm going to try to wrap this up as soon as I can. I'm almost there. It's one more slide. Notice these icons, type, substrate, season, and then the tells he puts in bold green. I wish everyone did this. This little book, I swear, 90 to 95% of the mushrooms you run it is going to have it. So this is really good. If you want to go deeper, I recommend this one. That's the one in the middle, but this has a different cover. This one just gives you a lot more science. There's a lot more in depth. It talks about the spores, etc. I love this book. This is my usual go-to. And then this is for those of you who really want to get deep. And the reason I like this book is because of the pictures. There's a realism. You notice that instead of in beautiful pictures on site, on the ground, or on the wood, it's really just on this neutral colored paper. This is what your mushrooms are going to look like when you bring them back home. They'll start brilliantly colored, and then they all turn brown and gray. So this is why I like this book, because the pictures are closer to what I'm actually going to look at when I come home after a few hours in the woods. But definitely, these two to start. And then if you want to take a picture of this, if you're interested in the others, go ahead. Anyone want any more? No? No? Okay. And then, that's it. Hey, can anyone, where are we? What is this? It's a cemetery. Graveyard, right? Cemetery. What's this? It's a destroying angel. Look, it's white. It's got the, look at it. It's the Amanita bisporigera. Look, it's got this. I found this and I said, you got to be kidding me. A deadly mushroom in a cemetery. That's it. So, folks, that's the end of the program. The librarians have been so patient with me, but they're eager to go home. So I will answer questions, but I will answer questions outside so they can close the library. So I want to say thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience.